Hello, welcome back to Elise Reads and Speaks. Today I am bringing you my June wrap-up. I read 13 books in the month of June, and I didn't have any 5 stars, but I did have a ton of 4 stars, so I still think that is a pretty decent reading month. I did have 2 1 stars, and I feel like I have been giving 1 stars out for spite because I'm just so angry by the time I get to the end of the book that it was so boring or so bad or something like that, but we will cross that bridge when I get to it. So let's just start at the beginning of the month and go all the way through to the end of the month with chronological order. So at the beginning of June, I read Happy Endings by Thien Kim-Lam. I talked about this one in my NetGalley Arcs video, and I was really psyched because the premise was that, you know, this girl and this guy that used to date meet up again in New Orleans, and she took her career in a completely different way, okay? I think instead of going into law, she decided to work for a sex toy shop, and his restaurant was folding under, so the way that they decided to save it was like to have a pop-up shop for vibrators. And I was like, this just sounds really funny, so let me read this. I was not into it. I gave it 2 stars, and I think it was because a lot of it came off very cheesy. So like the guy broke up with her originally on a post-it note, and to me that's like pulled right from Sex and the City, and they even mentioned Sex and the City sometime in the book that I'm like, okay, like I don't know. I felt like it was a little bit of a ripoff, but other than that, like the relationship itself was kind of cheesy. Like he decides that he wants to get back together with her years later when he hadn't reached out to her at all. Like he just ditched her, didn't say a word again. And then as soon as he sees her, he's madly in love with her again and like asks her to be his girlfriend. And I felt like it was like really cheesy middle school. But at the same time, you're dealing with sex toys, and you know, there are some steamy scenes in there too, so I was like, this is like a middle school relationship, but you're also throwing sex at me, so it's kind of like, ew, it made me feel icky. I will say, like, there was some sex positive things in here that I thought were really cool. Like the girl who works for the sex toy place, she had a pop-up shop one time for older women, like older women that you would consider grandmas and not having that type of sexuality in their life anymore. They were really into it, and they were just like, you know, just because I'm old doesn't mean that I'm not into this. And I just thought that was really cool because it highlighted a demographic that's not usually highlighted in a story like that. But I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that I did like, so I gave it 2 stars. Next, I read my arc of Malibu Rising by Jenkins Reid, and I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I gave it 4 stars. So if you remember, I read Evelyn Hugo, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. That book has still stuck with me. I think that's just going to be one of my favorite books of all time. I really, really enjoyed that book. So when you read the premise for Malibu Rising, it sounds really boring. Like kids with a famous father that have a party one summer and discover things about themselves. Like it sounds boring, okay? Like when I looked at the blurb and I was like, why did I request this? And then I saw the author, I was like, oh, that's why I requested it. All right, and as I was reading, I was like, oh, that's why I requested it, because she can write character work like no other. Like I felt every sibling in here had a really rich backstory, and the way that this is connected to Evelyn Hugo is that their father, their famous father, is one of her 7 husbands. This was the rock star that she was married to, I think for like 24 hours or something like that. But that's just the little connection that's here. So you see like a name pop up that you may recognize from Evelyn Hugo, but it's not like a story that you have to read Evelyn Hugo first, or even that you have to read Evelyn Hugo at all. Like it's a separate story. It just takes place in the same universe. And maybe it doesn't like have a driving plot, like it has to go from A to B to C, but the character work was fantastic, and each individual character arc I was just so invested in. So I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it 5 because I did not love it as much as Evelyn Hugo, and I know that it's not going to be one that like sticks with me, that I always think about and that makes me smile whenever I think about it, but I do think it was a really well-written story, so I'm sticking with the 4 stars. Next, I went on to Covet by Tracy Wolff. Oh man, look at this thing. It's so thick, and I flew right through it. I am really enjoying this series. I gave this one 4 stars too. I will say that I did not enjoy it as much as Crush. Crush is the second one. So I think for me it goes like Crush, Crave, Covet, or maybe even Crush, Covet, Crave, just because of the team that I'm on. I like the couple in here and not Crave. Okay, but either way, it is a world that I'm enjoying myself in. I feel like the nostalgia of Twilight whenever I read it. It's not exactly Twilight, but I mean, there are some certain similarities in here, and they even reference Twilight in the first book. So you know that she's drawing some inspiration from there. But also, it just gives me like the fun paranormal vibes that I miss reading in YA lit. Like, I'm not gonna apologize for this. I enjoy this series. It is a good time. Next, I read Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. This was an arc that I had from NetGalley, and okay, this one I rounded up to 4 stars. I think this is like a solid 3.5 for me. I really expected to love this one because both Tatiana and Michelle in my book club were hyping it up, and I was like, oh my god, they agree. I might like this one if they're agreeing. And I mean, like, it was okay. Again, I rounded up to 4 stars and I had an enjoyable time. It just was not a home run for me. I don't think it's one that I would pick up again, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it. Like, I did enjoy it and it was cute. So I like, you know, those rom-coms that focus on dancing. Like, you think of it like Save the Last Dance or Step Up or something like that. I'm like, why don't they put that in YA books? I love watching movies incorporating dancing. Put it in some books. And Nicola Yoon did. So I did enjoy that aspect in here. But that's not like the nicest thing. There's a little bit of magical realism that all of a sudden she like takes in this power that whenever she sees a couple kiss, she can see their relationship from beginning to end. Even if it hasn't ended yet, she just kind of like has that magic in her and she knows how their relationship is gonna end. So I like that. Like, I like the clairvoyance. It's a little magic. I thought that was fun, and that was easily the most interesting part because I thought it brought about a really interesting question. Like, if you know that your relationship is 1, going to end, and 2, how it's going to end, does that mean that you shouldn't pursue the relationship? Does that mean that you shouldn't have it at all to begin with because you know that it is going to end? And I kind of like that the story pushed on you that it's all about the journey and what you may learn from these relationships that you're in. And yes, they may end. Most relationships in your life are going to end until you find that special one. But I really like the lesson being taken away from it. Like, even if you know it's going to end, you can still get something from this, and this can bring something to the rest of your life. Like, I thought that was really nice. I thought the lesson was really nice. So I'm talking a lot about this book and I'm hyping it up, and you're probably like, why? Why is it 3.5 stars? I just felt like the relationship was kind of cheesy. And her other book, The Sun Is Also a Star, I enjoyed that one, and I'm pretty sure I did the same thing. I think I did like a 3.5 rounded up for that one because the relationship in that one was really cheesy, but I loved all the different side stories that were in that one. So it's like, I don't know, like, I want to read what she puts out, but I also just need these relationships to be a little more solid. Maybe not even like adult-like, but just not so like insta-lovey, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm sticking with 3.5. Then I listened to the audiobook of Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I gave this one 4 stars. This one was really good. I mean, like, it sucked me in and I needed to know what happened next. So if you're familiar with the R. Kelly documentary and R. Kelly being a garbage human being, that's where the inspiration was drawn from. I thought that this book was gonna have a psychological twist just because of some stuff that was happening. I don't wanna say exactly what, you know, spoiler's sake. But it made me think of another book that I read by her, and I was like, oh, is this what she does? Like, it's just everything's gonna be a psychological twist? And it didn't end up being what I thought it was going to be, and I was very happy for that, because I didn't want her to be like a one-trick pony, you know? I haven't gotten to Monday's Not Coming yet, and I hear that one is fantastic, but I will say if I read that one and it has a psychological twist or like an implied, I'm gonna be like, Okay, but that aside, I really enjoyed the author's note at the end because she's like, you know, this isn't a story about R. Kelly. It's a story about people turning a blind eye, people knowing exactly what is happening in these poor girls' lives and not saying a word and letting this man get away with things. You know, it wasn't just one man getting away with all this garbage. It was the system that like set him up and made sure that he could get away with it, which is exactly what happened with R. Kelly. I felt that was very interesting, that she was like, it's not about R. Kelly, but look at everybody else who helped him get there. Oh, that was so good. That was so good. 4 stars. Then I read my arc of Curse of the Specter Queen by Jenny Elder Moke. This one got 1 star. Oh my god, it was so boring. It was so boring. It was pitched as a gender-bent Indiana Jones retelling. I can barely tell you what even happens in that book. I thought my eyes were gonna fall out of my head because I was just like, this is so boring. And I mean, like, I got to the end and I was like, I just didn't care about any of that. And I can recall reading it and knowing that I was absorbing it as I was reading it, and I got to the end and I knew what happened, but I can't tell you now. I can't tell you what happened in that story. I think as soon as I was done, my brain just deleted it because I was not into it. 1 star. And then I had a surprising 4-star book. Light as a Feather by Zoe Aarsen. Like, I looked at this one and even the cover gives me Pretty Little Liars vibes, and the writing does too, all right? But I enjoyed Pretty Little Liars. So I was like, I kind of just want something mindless and fun in that vein. And this one, I mean, this one took me in and I was totally into it. Like, if you're in the mood for some high school kids that get in too deep with playing light as a feather, stiff as a board, like, you remember, right? You know, how you like stick your 2 fingers on each hand under somebody and they're all surrounding that one person. You're light as a feather, stiff as a board, light as a feather, stiff as a board, and they get raised up to the sky, okay? Very fun game to play at sleepovers. I can't explain why it's fun, it just is. And if you didn't do it, you are missing out in your middle school sleepovers. All right, so they like took this game and put a dark twist on it, that as soon as this girl starts telling the way that people died, those premonitions start coming true. Okay, so clearly something creepy is going on with the person that decided to have the game, to host the game and say all these ways that the people died. And they're like, what? Why is this coming true? So there's some like magical mystery thing here. There's also Ouija boards and betrayals and relationships and stuff like that. So it was a good time. And I believe there are 2 more books and I will definitely go on to the next ones. Then I listened to the audiobook of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I have wanted to read this one for a while and I just haven't gotten to it. Dude, I really, really enjoyed this one. This is another one that I gave 4 stars. The reason that I'm not giving it 5 is because there were parts that dragged on and lost me. And I was like, okay, let's go back to where we were. Come on, bring it back, bring it back. And it did. And I feel like I give it 4 stars because of the feelings that I had while I was reading it. It was just, I don't know, there was something really sweet and important, and I felt like it taught you about life. Not so much because of her relationship with death, with Lucifer, whatever she wanted to call him, Luke, whatever. All right, not so much thinking of life that way, but thinking about, you know, what a meaningful life is to you, because life is made up of the memories that we make. All right, and if people don't remember you, if people can't remember you, does that mean that you're actually having a life if you're leaving no lasting impression? I just thought it posed a lot of interesting questions, and when I got to the end of the book, I was really satisfied, and it left a smile on my face, and I had like those cozy, warm feelings. Like, I really think this was a beautifully written book. Then I read my arc of The Marvelous by Kann. Now, if you remember, a couple months ago, I read Let's Talk About Love by Kann, and I was into it. It was the first book that I read that featured an asexual character, and I got a lot out of it. So I was just excited to pick up something else by her. So I saw that she was the author, and I requested it. Dude, I hated this one. I gave it 1 star. I was not into it at all. It was like a modern day Willy Wonka twist, and no character was likable. The one that was holding the party was just, she was awful. Like, and these people that were involved in this, like, they had to stay in her house and possibly win, what was it, $100,000 or something like that. But the people that were there, I didn't like them either. I thought their backstories were very confusing. I could not connect to any characters. I didn't even think they were connecting to one another. It just felt like a big old mess, and I'm sorry, but I gave it 1 star. Then I read my arc of A Sisterhood of Secret Ambitions. This one is by Sheena Boekweg. I am so sad to say that I gave this one 3 stars. I know 3 stars is not bad, and it was not a bad book. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. The reason I'm so sad is because it had so much potential. I mean, like, this book started off, and the interesting things that were in there, I was like, oh my gosh, this could be really awesome. Like, the whole premise is that this society of women kind of preps these younger girls up to eventually bag a really important man. So there is this guy that is earmarked to be the next president. So they kind of like send girls out into the fray that hopefully he'll fall in love with one of them and want to date that one. And then they'll have one of their own society members in a very important place of power. Like, I just think that premise is really interesting. And plus it's like historical fiction. I think this was, oh gosh, 1910s to 1920s, around there. So just women bonding together like this when feminism really wasn't a thing yet, like, I was into it. And the way that they would communicate with each other was really cool. Like, they would write recipes down and exchange them back and forth, but if certain things were in those recipes, it meant something specific. Like, I think it was like a dash of vanilla means immediate, like this is urgent, this has to happen now, because it's the word dash. Like, little things like that were in there. It's so good. Like, I can tell you about all the things that I loved in there. The thing that made it really awful was the relationships. Like, I mean, again, it was not awful. It wasn't. It was just the relationship buildup was very cheesy. The guy that the main girl ends up liking, it was insta-love. The guy that was earmarked to be president with the main girl, their relationship, there's just nothing there. And I was like, you have so much. You have such great groundwork for this story. And I just, the relationships, like, they were over the top cheesy and I couldn't stand it. But I just love the other stuff so much. But you see why I had to give it 3 stars, because it could have gone really far one way or really far the other way. And it's just 3 stars. My next book I also gave 3 stars. This was An Unlikely Spy by Rebecca Starford. This was an arc that I also had from NetGalley. And the reason that this one is 3 stars is because I did not feel strongly one way or the other. I felt that the spy that was in this story, so she's a spy spying on the Nazis and whatnot, she was kind of nondescript. But I also feel that was the point. Like, if they picked somebody that was so, out there and memorable and captivating, she wouldn't have gotten away with all of her spying. So, like, I get why this is not a very bubbly character that's extremely likable to the reader. However, just because I get that doesn't mean that I liked it. Like, I just didn't feel one way or another about her. In fact, her friend I was much more interested in, and then her friend ended up having like a much bigger to-do with the story, but that's a spoiler, okay? So I'm not gonna say what it is. I finished it and I felt like, okay, that was all right. I felt like it could have been better. Doesn't leave a lasting impression, so I'm sticking with 3 stars. Okay, the next arc that I read was Tell Me When You Feel Something by Vicki Grant. And I just had to go look it up because I was like, I actually don't remember a thing about this story. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna read you my review that I wrote on Goodreads, and then I'll see if it jogs my memory at all. All right, so I wrote, well, that was weird. Not off to a good start. I should say that I gave this 2 stars. First off, major trigger warnings for this book: sexual abuse, grooming, rape, alcoholism. If you're in the least bit triggered by any of these things, do not read this book. It is not for you. Okay, I'm starting to remember it now. This book wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I'm not sure this book knew what it was trying to be either. It was very messy, it jumped around timeline-wise, the various points of view were confusing to read from, and there were several subplots that just didn't need to be there. I remember. It's a story about a girl, Vivian, being taken advantage of and not remembering it. But it also has these big subplots of her mom raging against her father's new fiance and the matchmaking Viv's doing with her 2 friends, Davida and Tim. I'm not kidding. These subplots take up chapters in the book, and it just makes for a really weird reading experience. I think if the author stuck to the main plot of the simulated patient program and the eerie, unexplained things happening and presented it in a linear timeline, this could have been a much better book. Unfortunately, there was just way too much going on, and it confused me to the point of not being able to connect with anyone or anything. It felt more like a rough draft of an idea that never went through an edit. Ooh. It came off a little harsh, huh? I guess I had strong feelings when I was writing that. But now that I read that back, I'm like, oh yeah, like this simulated patient program. Okay, like sometimes simulated patient programs, you pretend that you have sicknesses and whatnot so that doctors can pretend to come up with a cure for you or even practice their bedside manner. It's something that actually goes on. In this one, there was like even makeup being put on them. I don't know if that happens, but like I thought that was cool. But yeah, through this whole program, there is some sexual abuse that happens. And that's right, that was the driving force of the story. And then like these other things that were coming in, I was like, what are you doing? There was just too much going on. It was very, very confusing. So yes, I stick with 2 stars. The last book that I read in the month of June was Heartbreak for Hire by Sonia Hartl. Now, this one was cute. I gave it 3 stars. Maybe it's like a 3.5 rounded down because looking back on it, I did enjoy it. So maybe it is more of a 3.5. So I went and read reviews and it seemed like people had a problem with, I guess, the aggressive feminism in here. And that was actually the part that I really liked about it because it didn't shy away from telling you exactly what it's about. Like these girls were gonna have revenge on men. Like that's what the story's about. If you don't like that, don't read it. So let me quickly go over the premise of this one. So this Heartbreak for Hire, it's actually a company comprised of these 4 women. I think there's like 1 boss and 4 women, and they each have different categories. Like one's in grifting, one's in egos, and depending on what category they're in charge of, they get certain men that are marks. And women kind of like know that this company exists, and if they need to take men down a peg, they hire this company to do whatever they need to do with whatever guy. So one of her marks that she got in the ego group ended up eventually being hired by this company when they decided to make a men's division. So like there's the women's division of 4, there's going to be a new men's division of 4. So then he's just like, what the heck? You know, this is what happened to me. And of course it's a romance, so you know that they're gonna fall in love. So that was interesting. I really liked the idea of these women getting like vigilante justice on assholes. Like, I think that's kind of fun. And it's just a book and fluff. Like, I don't know. I had a good time reading it. You know, there were some things that were cheesy. Like, I remember when they were hooking up at one point and he was like, oh, that's my smart ass girl. And I was like, is that supposed to be sexy? Because I think I would laugh in somebody's face if they said something like that to me. So yeah, there was some cheesy parts in it. So it wasn't like, you know, a home run or anything like that. But I did enjoy my time. So, I mean, I guess I'll stick with 3, but I'm thinking it's more of a 3.5. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in the month of June. So it wasn't a bad reading month. I did have a ton of 4-star books, but there were 2 1-stars and there were a couple 2-stars. So, you know, back and forth, back and forth. But hey, that's how it goes. Anyway, that's all that I've got for today. Thank you for tuning in to Elise Reads and Speaks, and I will catch you next time, guys. Bye!